welcome to Zero Cool Gaming and today's anime review. Today we're going to be reviewing an anime called Darkside Blues. Now, Darkside Blues is one of those animes that I never finished. Well, I shouldn't say I never finished. I couldn't finish because it was never finished. For some reason, I seem to find these type of animes. And I think it has to do with my taste in anime in that respect. Since there's a wide variety of shows that I'm willing to watch, these type of shows, the ones that were never finished, for one reason or another, I ended up watching. Especially from years ago, because when anime was first coming over here to the US, especially a lot of the series anime, we wouldn't get the entire series. We would get episode 1, episode 2, episode 5, episode 15, episode 17, that sort of thing. So I avoided a lot of the series anime back when I first started watching anime, and chose to watch the shorter stuff, the stuff that wasn't that long, and mainly that was because I could actually watch all of it, usually, and this is one of those animes that I watched back then. Now, because this anime was never finished, there's a lot of questions that don't make sense. But I think, well, anyway, I'll talk about that here in a second. Let's go over basically what the anime is, to my understanding. You basically have a world where technology is reaching a point where it would be difficult to tell the difference between technology and magic. And in fact, technology has become so advanced that it itself can detect when what we would consider magical things occur. I mean, they call them dimensional anomalies, but that's essentially what that would be. To give a more base understanding of it, I mean, you could put a bunch of scientific mumbo jumbo behind it, but basically it means a being from a different dimension found a way to exist within our dimension, and it crossed dimensional barriers to do so. And they had the technology to detect this when it happened. So it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down in that respect. I have no idea where this story was planning on going. But it seemed like what he was there to do was essentially assess the human species. Because truly I don't think, in the greater scheme of things, it matters whether you advance mentally or technologically. Either form of advancement, once it reaches a certain level, has the potential to be extremely dangerous to the galaxy in that respect. Not just your own world, but the galaxy as a whole. And I would think that in some way there are checks and balances put in place for that, which is what I think this show was trying to portray. Was a being coming from another dimension to basically see how the human species got to the point that it's at, and B, whether or not we could be trusted to um, operate at that level without endangering everyone else. That's kind of what the show felt like it was going for. Um, but as far as what it does, I mean, it's a good action show. It dives into some pretty deep subjects. Gives you some things to think about, absolutely. Um, and it also kind of shows the dark nature of technology in that respect. For every good that we do with technology and medical advancements, there's 1,000 atrocities behind that. So I think this show was also trying to point that out as well. It kind of opened up with it. What do I think about Darkside Blues? Well, it would be nice if they'd finish it. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I mean, it's been like 30 years. Well, 24 years. Yeah, I don't think that's probably going to ever happen at this point. But it would be nice to see how they were intending to end it, yes. It's an interesting show. It's definitely designed for adults. This isn't a kid's show in that respect. There's obviously, you got a small faction of resistance, and that's where this guy goes to. And then you have those who essentially do rule the world or have control over the vast majority of it. And it doesn't seem like he's in true opposition to either group. It's more like he's trying to figure out why the opposition exists, not necessarily how powerful or weak they are. He already knows how powerful the human race is as a species, and that's really what he's there to determine. So, a unique show, interesting at the very least. It shows quite a bit of self-thought, which is probably one of the reasons why this show isn't blasted all over the place. And it might have been one of the reasons that it was shut down, because it does teach you critical thinking skills. It asks you questions directly, which will require you to think for yourself to even come close to any kind of answer, because it's not going to answer any of them. And it doesn't. It doesn't even try. It just presents you with the question. It does provide you with the necessary information or sub-questions, sub-ideas, intelligence, I guess is a way of putting it, to properly look into the questions it asks and come up with your own understandings for them. What makes that more difficult as far as for the writers in this show is that it's set in a futuristic sci-fi setting. It would be much easier for them to ask these questions on a reality-based setting for today. The problem with doing that, which I think they were trying to get away from, is that also limits your understanding of the question itself. So yeah, deep thought, truly. This show has a lot of deep thought in it. enjoy it on the surface level for what it is. It is an enjoyable show. It does have a storyline. It's relatively relatable. Um, and it's just good fun. And just under the surface are a whole lot of questions about morality, humanity, existence, life, death. um, there's no subject for which it shies away from in that respect. Um, so yeah, I like shows that do that. I think that they're good entertainment. Um, couldn't find a whole lot on this show, like I was saying. One of the things that I guess you could say is a little odd for this show, even though there's not a lot to the show itself. There's not a lot on it either, as far as reviews and things to that effect. It's one of those shows where they copy and paste it again, where all the reviews are basically the same view, and they might add or delete a couple of sentences here and there, but nothing outside of what's already been stated. If you go a few pages in, you can find a couple of decent reviews from people who did enjoy it, which I thought was a plus. I mean, it's always nice to hear from actual people in that respect. The show itself, it has decent animation done to it. The voice acting is decent. Like I said, the story is incomplete, but even at that, it sets a tone as to what it intends to do, and it's good at setting that tone, which is not to answer your questions, but give you questions to answer. And yeah, it would seem that the powers that be don't like shows like this. They would prefer that this show just sink into oblivion and people forget that it was ever made. But I'm not going to do that. I enjoyed this show. I thought it was interesting. I thought that it had some good points. And had it been allowed to finish, I think it would have presented even more in-depth questions. Presented even more moral challenges for people to play around with. See what they come up with. So yeah, if you like shows that ask questions and don't provide answers to those questions, then watch Darkside Blues. It definitely does that. That's my rant for the day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of yours.